Hello there, and welcome to the Sleepy Science Channel. Tonight, we drift into the vast and mesmerizing world of the unknown. This is a world of mysterious lights in the sky, where the earth murmurs with sounds that defy logic, and where oceans and forests hide secrets beyond our imagination. Unexplained phenomena exist just beneath the surface of our everyday lives, waiting patiently in the shadows. For every question science has answered, countless others hover just beyond its reach. There are strange signals from space and unusual patterns that defy the laws of nature, as if guided by an unseen hand. Some of these mysteries touch the edges of science, while others seem to follow different rules entirely. Each one reminds us that our world is not fully explained. It is a beautiful landscape full of infinite wonders. If you enjoy these quiet journeys, I invite you to like, subscribe, or share a thought below. It helps others find their way here too, one sleepy soul at a time. But for now, all you need to do is relax. Allow your eyes to soften and your breathing to slow. And let these gentle mysteries settle your mind. Let's begin. The human brain occasionally produces shared dreams between people who never spoke. Reports from sleep clinics, research volunteers, and ordinary people sometimes describe dream scenarios that match with startling precision, even when the individuals involved have never met. These shared experiences can include identical landscapes, similar characters, or sequences of events that unfold in the same order. Neuroscientists have tried to determine whether broad cultural imagery could account for the overlap, yet many cases contain highly specific details that fall outside common motifs. Some researchers investigate whether subtle environmental cues, such as nearby electrical activity or atmospheric conditions, might influence brain patterns during sleep. Others explore the possibility that emotional states can shape dreams in ways that converge across individuals who share no physical proximity. The phenomenon remains elusive, appearing only rarely and often without tools present to measure it directly. Each shared dream challenges our understanding of how private the sleeping mind truly is, hinting at deeper networks of perception still hidden from view. Some stars flicker in patterns that look almost deliberate. When astronomers stare at distant suns for long stretches of time, they expect gentle rises and falls in brightness as planets pass by or surfaces slowly churn. Yet some stars behave in far stranger ways, dimming and brightening in complex, almost coded sequences. Instead of a simple curve, their light forms irregular steps and sharp drops, as if enormous shapes are drifting across their faces in unusual orbits. Dust clouds can explain some of it, and swarms of comets are often proposed, but in a few cases, the behavior remains stubbornly odd. The star may fade by a large fraction, then stay steady, then flicker in uneven bursts that resist neat explanation. No single model comfortably accounts for every feature. With each new observation campaign, the pattern grows richer, not simpler, leaving us with light curves that feel like messages from a stellar environment we do not yet know how to read. The oceans hold shadowy moving lights that have no known source. On some rare nights, sailors and satellite operators report vast patches of sea glowing softly, not with the point-like flashes of familiar organisms, but with an eerie, uniform radiance that can stretch across areas larger than whole countries. Within these luminous fields, faint shapes seem to drift and swirl, as if clouds of light are flowing beneath the waves. Traditional bioluminescent plankton can explain many sparkling displays, yet these expansive and steady glows are different. Ships that cross them sometimes report no obvious organisms in the water, just a milky sheen that lingers around the hull. Modern satellites have captured similar events, confirming that the phenomenon truly spans enormous distances. Some scientists suspect unknown communities of bacteria. Others imagine complex chemical reactions triggered in ways we do not yet grasp. For now, the moving lights remain a quiet, oceanic riddle, flickering briefly into view, then fading back into uncharted darkness. There are remote valleys where compasses spin wildly for no clear reason. Travelers describe walking into certain secluded landscapes and watching their compass needles twist, hesitate, then point in directions that do not line up with any map. Move a few steps, and the needle may whirl again, as if something beneath the ground is tugging at it with invisible fingers. Local legends often grow around such places, speaking of lost mines or hidden forces. Scientists who visit find puzzling readings even with modern instruments. Magnetic rocks can certainly warp a compass, yet in some of these valleys the variations are more intricate than simple deposits would suggest. The field may fluctuate over short distances, creating pockets where navigation becomes deeply unreliable. Models of Earth's magnetic behavior struggle to reproduce every detail. These valleys sit quietly under open sky, but within their soil and stone, subtle structures may be shaping the field in ways that are still beyond our complete understanding. Ancient forests have unexplained temperature drops that appear in moving patches. Walkers in old-growth woodlands sometimes step from warm air into pockets of sudden chill, as if crossing an invisible boundary. These cold zones can drift slowly through the undergrowth, shifting position without any connection to wind or shade. Instruments brought into such forests record sharp differences over only a few steps, with temperatures falling by several degrees in a strangely uniform manner. The vegetation does not always account for it, and the pattern can persist even when the canopy is open. Some researchers suspect subtle interactions between soil moisture, underground airflow, and the dense layering of leaves, creating natural microclimates that behave like living currents. Others believe ancient forests hold unique atmospheric structures that form only in places where centuries of growth have shaped the air itself. Whatever the mechanism, these wandering pockets of cold feel almost intentional, as if the forest breathes through shifting threads of coolness. Earth emits strange low-frequency hum sounds, even when no earthquakes occur. Sensitive instruments listening to the planet reveal a constant background murmur, a deep vibration that is always there, even during calm days with no major tectonic activity. This hum lies at frequencies too low for human ears, stretching over many seconds for each cycle, like the slow breathing of a sleeping world. Some components can be traced to ocean waves pressing on the seafloor and winds pushing against continents, but even after accounting for these influences, something remains. It is as if the crust, oceans, and atmosphere are engaged in a continuous conversation whose full grammar is still unknown. The hum changes with seasons and weather in subtle ways, hinting at connections between distant regions. Researchers map its structure to study the interior of Earth, yet each refinement reveals new wrinkles in the signal. The planet is never truly silent, and the source of part of its deepest song is still not fully understood. Certain rocks emit pulses of energy that occur in complex patterns. Geologists studying unusual mineral formations have discovered that some rocks release faint bursts of energy, detectable only with sensitive instruments. These pulses do not behave like simple thermal fluctuations or piezoelectric reactions. Instead, they follow intricate sequences that rise and fall in strength over minutes or hours, forming patterns that can repeat yet never quite duplicate themselves. The effect appears in specific combinations of minerals arranged under particular pressures, though no single chemical property explains the full behavior. Some theories suggest slow rearrangements of internal crystal structure, while others point to interactions between trapped fluids and microscopic fractures. Laboratory attempts to reproduce the pulses often yield partial success, but the full complexity emerges only in natural settings where countless variables interact. These rocks sit quietly in the landscape, yet inside them unfolds a subtle choreography of energy that hints at processes far more dynamic than their still surfaces suggest. Some deserts emit whispers of sound, even in complete stillness. In certain remote dunes, travelers sometimes hear faint murmurs rising from the sand, even when the wind has completely died down. These whispers can resemble distant voices or the soft brushing of fabric, drifting in and out with no clear source. When scientists investigate, they find that grains in these deserts can shift microscopically due to temperature changes, causing tiny movements that release delicate vibrations. Yet this explanation does not always fully match the richness of the sounds reported. Some deserts produce tones that fluctuate, building and fading as if shaped by a conductor hidden beneath the surface. The particular mineral makeup of the sand, the precise size of the grains, and the structure of the underlying rock all seem to influence the effect. Each location has its own voice, a signature murmur created by conditions so finely balanced that even small changes silence it. These quiet desert songs remind us that stillness can hold its own kind of music. There are repeating radio bursts from deep space that defy current astrophysics. Radio telescopes occasionally detect short flashes arriving from far beyond our galaxy, each lasting only fractions of a second, yet carrying enormous energy. A few sources repeat, sending out bursts separated by distinct intervals that do not correspond to known stellar processes. Some cycles appear orderly, while others show irregular patterns that still manage to circle back to a core rhythm. The distances involved are so vast that the signals travel for millions of years before reaching us, yet their structure remains crisp enough to study. Models propose magnetized neutron stars or exotic plasma interactions, but none capture every characteristic. Some bursts shift slightly in frequency, as if they are moving through an environment with changing density, while others remain astonishingly consistent across observations. The universe is full of noise, yet these signals stand out like the tolling of distant bells whose makers remain unseen. They remind us that deep space may host engines of energy we have not yet imagined. Certain caves generate light that does not behave like reflection or glow. Explorers in rare cavern systems have reported faint illumination hovering along walls or drifting near the ceiling, even when no lamps or bioluminescent organisms are present. This light lacks the clear origin of a beam and does not cling to surfaces as reflected shine usually does. Instead, it appears suspended in the air, forming soft patches that shimmer and fade as observers move closer. When researchers take measurements, they sometimes record wavelengths that do not match known minerals or fluorescent reactions. Moisture in the air can scatter light, but these caves do not always show the necessary humidity levels. Some suspect chemical interactions between gases seeping from the rock might create transient glimmers. Others propose that microscopic crystals in the air could refract minuscule amounts of ambient light in a way that creates the illusion of self-generated brightness. Whatever the cause, the glow feels strangely alive within the cave darkness. No one knows why some animals migrate thousands of miles with impossible precision. Across land, sea, and sky, certain creatures undertake journeys so long and accurate that they challenge what is known about animal senses. They travel across entire continents, navigate through open oceans with no visible landmarks, and arrive at precise locations that their ancestors visited generations earlier. Magnetic cues explain part of their ability, yet many species continue to succeed even when experiments disrupt magnetic information. Some follow faint chemical traces carried by currents, while others track the position of the sun or stars. Yet these cues alone cannot account for their uncanny accuracy. In some cases, animals correct their course after storms or detours with astonishing speed, as if guided by an inner map far deeper than instinct. The more scientists study these migrations, the more layers appear within the behavior. What looks simple at first becomes a tapestry of perception and orientation woven into bodies shaped by countless seasons of travel. The deep sea contains sudden roars that do not match any known creature. Hydrophones placed in the abyss sometimes capture thundering sounds rising from the darkness, bursts of noise that echo across miles of water. These roars do not match the calls of whales, the grinding of icebergs, or the rumble of submarine volcanic activity. They surge into existence with surprising clarity, then vanish into silence. Some appear to come from deep trenches where few animals are known to live, while others originate near underwater mountains that remain poorly explored. Pressure changes and shifting geology can create low-frequency vibrations, yet the tone of the roars often carries a character that suggests something different. The events do not occur with predictable timing. Each recording deepens the mystery rather than resolving it. The ocean is vast, layered with pressure and darkness, and these sudden bursts of sound remind us that entire realms of activity may be unfolding where sunlight has never reached. There are ancient structures aligned with celestial events beyond expected accuracy. Archaeologists studying stone monuments, earthworks, and megalithic formations have discovered alignments so precise that they match the rising or setting points of specific stars, or the sun, during rare, seasonal moments. Some structures capture the first ray of dawn on a single day each year, channeling light through narrow corridors or highlighting carvings placed with exacting care. Others frame distant mountains where celestial bodies appear only at particular intervals. The precision of these alignments often surpasses what early tools and methods would seem to allow. Each new discovery raises questions about the observational skills and cultural priorities of the builders. Perhaps they spent generations perfecting the geometry, or perhaps their understanding of the sky was richer and more mathematical than previously believed. Whatever the case, these structures suggest that ancient peoples wove cosmic rhythms into their architecture, creating places where earth and sky meet with astonishing accuracy. The sun sometimes emits mysterious radio signals that no one can fully explain. Buried in the steady roar of solar noise, radio telescopes sometimes catch sudden, narrow whispers that do not fit the usual patterns of flares or eruptions. They flare into existence at very specific frequencies, rise and fall in intensity with surprising precision, then vanish as if a switch has been flipped. Astronomers can trace them to regions near magnetic loops and sunspots, yet their shape in the data looks strangely organized, as if something within the plasma briefly tuned itself to a hidden rule. These signals can repeat, but not with the clean rhythm of a predictable cycle. Some theories suggest intricate magnetic reconnections. Others imagine unknown wave modes rippling through superheated gas. For now, the sun keeps this radio language mostly to itself, leaving us with delicate traces in our instruments and the unsettling sense that our own star still holds secrets inside its light. In high-altitude skies, bright pulses of light appear without storms or lightning. Pilots and atmospheric observers have reported sudden flashes far above the usual cloud layers, brief bursts of brightness that flare and vanish in the thin, cold air of the upper atmosphere. Unlike familiar lightning, these pulses may appear in seemingly clear regions, away from towering storm clouds, and they do not always leave the sharp, forked scars we associate with electrical discharges. High-speed cameras occasionally capture strange shapes that bloom and collapse in milliseconds, expanding disks, vertical streaks, and expanding rings that challenge simple explanations. Some of these events may be linked to faint disturbances lower in the atmosphere, to waves of charged particles, or to subtle electrical imbalances that momentarily tip over. Yet many observations arrive without clear context, just an isolated flash against the stars. These high-altitude lights reveal that the sky is not merely an empty ceiling, but a restless, electrically active ocean whose rarest waves are still being catalogued. Deep underground, instruments detect rhythms that do not match any geological process. In deep boreholes and subterranean observatories, sensors listen for the slow creaks of shifting rock and the distant rumble of earthquakes. Alongside these expected signals, however, researchers have sometimes found repeating pulses that arrive with curious regularity, yet do not align with known tides, seismic events, or human activity. They can persist for long periods, ticking away like an underground metronome hidden in the dark. The intervals may be measured in minutes or hours, their strength rising and falling over months. Some ideas point to subtle fluid movements in deep aquifers, others to interactions between magma and solid rock far below, but the match is never perfect. The rhythms continue even when nearby regions fall quiet. They hint at dynamic processes in the lower crust and upper mantle, but have not yet been directly observed. Buried beneath layers of stone, the planet appears to keep time with clocks we have only just begun to notice. Some mountains produce musical tones that change with the seasons. In certain ranges, visitors speak of hearing faint humming or singing on still days, as if the peaks themselves are resonating. When researchers bring instruments, they sometimes identify low, pure tones emerging from rock faces, scree slopes, or frozen surfaces. The pitch can drift from one time of year to another, rising during warm months and falling in the cold, or reversing in more complex ways. Wind can cause rocks and ice to vibrate, but in these special places, the relationship between breeze, temperature, and sound seems unusually delicate. Thin films of ice, shifting snowpack, and minute cracks in stone can all behave like parts of a giant natural instrument. Yet the exact geometry that produces such clear notes is often hard to find, even after careful measurement. The mountain soundscape becomes an evolving composition written by temperature, wind, and hidden cavities, a seasonal song whose full score remains partially hidden within the stone. No one knows why certain lakes glow softly at night with no bioluminescent life present. Field teams have occasionally arrived at remote waters to find a gentle radiance lingering across the surface, as if the lake were holding on to the last light of dusk long after the sky has gone dark. Close inspection reveals no obvious glowing algae, no swarms of luminous creatures, only water and sediments that appear ordinary by day. Measurements sometimes reveal a faint spectrum that does not match common organisms, hinting instead at chemical reactions or minerals slowly releasing stored energy. In some locations, the glow may cluster along the shoreline. In others, it floats across the open water like a pale veil. Attempts to reproduce the effect in laboratories often fall short, suggesting that a subtle combination of geology, past weather, and water chemistry is at play. These night-shining lakes sit quietly under the stars, carrying a soft light whose origin remains uncertain, inviting visitors to linger and simply watch. There are regions where birds suddenly change flight direction as if reacting to something unseen. Forks that were moving confidently in one direction can abruptly wheel away, turning almost as a single body, even when no predator is visible and no storm appears on the horizon. High-speed videos show that the change can begin with just a few birds, yet their decision ripples outward in a fraction of a second, as though the entire group sensed a new signal at once. Weather data, visual cues, and known sounds do not always account for these shifts. Some experiments suggest that birds can detect faint changes in air pressure, infrasound from distant events, or variations in Earth's magnetic field. but the exact triggers for the most dramatic collective turns remain obscure. These moments hint at sensory worlds layered on top of our own, where information travels through cues we barely notice. In those sudden swerves, the sky briefly reveals a hidden conversation that is still only partially decoded. The atmosphere sometimes produces perfectly spherical ice balls in clear skies. Observers have found small, smooth spheres of ice scattered across open fields, even on days when the sky is bright and unbroken. These ice balls lack the jagged shapes of hailstones and instead display a polished, near-perfect roundness that suggests a very different formation process. They appear in clusters, sometimes hundreds strewn across a single area, yet no towering storm cloud was present to generate them. Some studies propose that fragile crystals grow around floating particles in extremely stable air layers, shaping themselves gradually before falling as gentle spheres. Others note that the spheres can split open along delicate seams, hinting at pressure changes during their descent. The high clarity in their structure and their formation in calm conditions make them one of the more puzzling atmospheric gifts. Their presence suggests that the sky can craft intricate shapes under conditions far more subtle than storms or thunder. Some glaciers release melodies as if singing from within the ice. During certain seasons, travelers near glacial valleys hear tones drifting from deep crevasses, long sustained notes that seem to vibrate through the frozen air. The sound can resemble a distant choir or a single pure voice resonating through ice. Scientists studying these acoustic events have traced some to the movement of meltwater carving hidden channels that act like natural wind instruments. Yet, not all melodies fit this explanation. Some tones rise and fall with a smoothness that suggests finely tuned resonance chambers within the shifting ice. Temperature changes can cause slabs to expand and contract, producing long, harmonic moans. In some cases, the glacier sings only at particular times of day, when conditions align in a delicate balance of pressure and flow. Each glacier has its own sonic signature, shaped by its internal architecture. These frozen songs reveal the living complexity hidden inside ice that appears silent from afar. Remote islands experience sudden bright sky flashes with no atmospheric cause. People living on isolated islands have long reported abrupt bursts of light illuminating the sky above them, even when no storms, meteors, or human-made sources are present. These flashes last only a moment, yet they can light vast areas as if the moon had suddenly brightened. Researchers visiting these islands occasionally witness the phenomenon themselves, confirming that the flashes are not simply local legend. The events do not leave the trails associated with meteors, nor do they match the scattered glow of distant lightning. Some propose that electrical charges can build up between sea and sky under rare conditions, releasing quick pulses that resemble silent lightning. Others suggest that energetic particles in the upper atmosphere might interact with regional magnetic fields in unpredictable ways. Whatever the underlying cause, the flashes arrive without warning, leaving behind nothing but questions and the memory of a brief, silent brilliance. There are clouds that hold their shape for unnaturally long periods. Occasionally, observers look up to see clouds that remain frozen in place for astonishing lengths of time, retaining crisp edges, even while the surrounding sky shifts and drifts. These formations may hover above mountains, over plains, or in coastal regions without showing the gentle unraveling that usually softens cloud outlines. Some appear as smooth ovals, others as towering walls of vapor suspended as if pinned to an unseen structure. Meteorologists attribute many stable clouds to trapped air layers, standing waves, or temperature inversions, but some displays persist far longer than current models predict. Instruments record still air where movement should occur, or temperature gradients too weak to maintain such well-defined shapes. the sky becomes a canvas holding a single brushstroke that refuses to fade. These enduring clouds reveal that the atmosphere contains delicate balances capable of preserving form far beyond our usual expectations. Some waterfalls release floating orbs of light in silence. Under rare conditions, travelers at certain waterfalls report seeing small glowing spheres drifting near the base of the falling water. These orbs glide slowly, hovering above the mist without obvious support, sometimes rising a short distance before dissolving into the spray. Unlike reflections or refracted sunlight, they do not flicker with movement of the water and often appear during dim or overcast weather. Researchers who witness them note that the spheres hold a steady color and brightness, as if generated from within. One idea proposes that charged droplets in turbulent air may organize into temporary clusters that trap and release energy, though experiments reproduce only faint hints of the effect. The orbs move with a calmness that contrasts sharply with the roar of the waterfall. They drift like curious visitors made of light, revealing that even ordinary landscapes can host unexpected luminous phenomena. Volcanoes emit harmonic vibrations that sound almost musical. Monitoring stations placed on active volcanoes often detect patterns of vibration known as harmonic tremors, but in some locations, these tremors take on astonishingly melodic qualities. Instead of chaotic rumbling, the sensors record tones that rise and fall with smooth continuity, forming sequences reminiscent of slowly shifting chords. These vibrations originate deep within magma conduits, where molten rock and trapped gases interact in ways that are not yet fully mapped. As pressure changes inside the system, the tremors adjust, creating a kind of subterranean song. Each volcano produces its own tonal signature, shaped by the geometry of its chambers and the viscosity of its magma. While the sounds are rarely audible without special equipment, once converted to frequencies within human hearing, they reveal an eerie beauty. These natural melodies hint at the dynamic conversations taking place far beneath the surface, where geological forces express themselves through gentle oscillations. The night sky sometimes displays silent waves of light, not linked to the aurora. Observers in remote regions have occasionally seen broad ripples of brightness sweeping across the sky, even when geomagnetic activity is low and no auroras are expected. These waves do not show the familiar curtains or colors of auroral light. Instead, they appear as pale, expansive bands that drift steadily from horizon to horizon. High-sensitivity cameras capture their motion, revealing patterns that resemble ocean swells moving through the upper atmosphere. Some scientists attribute these displays to gravity waves propagating through thin air layers, causing faint variations in airglow. Yet the brightness of certain waves surpasses what current models can easily explain. They form without storms, solar flares, or disturbances strong enough to influence the ionosphere. The sky becomes a quiet surface, marked by shifting illumination, reminding us that the atmosphere hosts subtleties far beyond the common catalogue of celestial spectacles. Certain meteorites contain structures that do not match familiar crystalline forms. When researchers cut open unusual meteorites, they sometimes find internal patterns shaped with geometric precision that defy common mineral growth. Some contain long, interwoven metallic lines, arranged in angles rarely seen in terrestrial rocks. Others hold pockets filled with shapes that look almost engineered, yet arise from natural processes inside ancient parent bodies. These structures may have formed under pressures and cooling rates that no longer exist on Earth, or within environments where exotic alloys behaved in unpredictable ways. Attempts to recreate such patterns in laboratories often fall short, producing only partial replicas. The meteorites themselves are fragments of bodies that formed in distant regions of the early solar system, carrying signatures of processes long vanished. Each odd structure provides a glimpse into cosmic conditions that shaped matter into arrangements both alien and impossibly intricate. Some regions experience spontaneous magnetic surges without any known trigger. In certain isolated locations, magnetometers have recorded abrupt increases in magnetic field strength that last for seconds or minutes before fading without trace. These surges do not correspond to solar activity, electrical storms, or shifting underground deposits. They arise without warning, forming brief pulses that challenge the usual stability of Earth's magnetic environment. Researchers have attempted to link them to atmospheric disturbances, but many surges occur on calm days. Others have tested whether large amounts of metal in the ground might oscillate under specific conditions, yet the timing remains too erratic for such explanations. The surges behave like invisible tides rising and falling in silence, hinting at processes that may involve interactions between deep crustal currents and the outer magnetic field. Each unexplained spike is a reminder that the forces shaping our planet operate with layers of complexity that are still unfolding. There are animals that hear or sense events long before they happen. Many species display sudden behavioral changes prior to earthquakes, storms, or distant disturbances. Birds may erupt into flight, dogs may grow restless, and fish may alter their swimming patterns even when instruments detect no immediate signs of change. Studies reveal that animals can respond to infrasound, subtle ion shifts, or minute vibrations that travel far ahead of major events. Yet some reactions occur too early or too consistently to fit known sensory inputs. Field reports describe entire groups moving to safe ground long before any measurable signal appears. The sensitivity likely combines multiple senses layered together, forming a kind of natural early warning system that we have not fully deciphered. These instinctive responses remind us that animals inhabit a broader sensory world, one tuned to faint cues that escape human perception. Their reactions point to environmental threads we do not yet know how to follow. The deep ocean floor holds perfectly carved circular patterns of unknown origin. High-resolution seafloor surveys have revealed intricate circular formations etched into the sediment, some stretching many meters across with astonishing symmetry. The rings appear far from shore in regions without strong currents or known biological architects. Their edges curve with mathematical precision, forming spirals, ridges, and repeating motifs that resemble artistic designs rather than random traces of nature. Some patterns may be shaped by slow interactions between shifting water layers and fine grains of sediment, but the exact mechanisms remain unclear. Others are located in areas with unusual chemical conditions, suggesting that gas seeps or thermal gradients might sculpt the shapes. Yet many circles rise above simple explanations, appearing too delicate or too cleanly defined for their harsh environment. These deep-sea patterns remain among the most visually striking mysteries discovered in the ocean, hinting at processes beneath the waves that continue to defy easy interpretation. No one can explain why ball lightning moves with purposeful grace. Witnesses across many regions describe glowing spheres drifting through air with an unnerving sense of intention. These luminous orbs can glide horizontally, rise vertically, or slip through open windows without disturbing curtains or dust. They hold their brightness in a steady glow rather than flashing like ordinary lightning, and they sometimes split into smaller spheres that continue along their own paths. Laboratory experiments have created brief imitations using vaporized materials or plasma discharges, yet none behave with the smooth, deliberate motion seen in real events. The orbs can last for several seconds or more, far longer than typical electrical arcs, and they often navigate around obstacles with unsettling ease. Some theories propose trapped electromagnetic fields, while others suggest self-stabilizing plasma structures sustained by chemical reactions. Even with modern instruments, Authentic samples are nearly impossible to study because the phenomenon appears unpredictably. Each rare encounter leaves behind the impression of a radiant visitor guided by rules we have not uncovered. Certain fungi glow in patterns that change with lunar cycles. Deep in forests, some mushroom species emit a soft green radiance that pulses with subtle rhythm. When researchers monitor these glows over long periods, they find that the brightness often increases or fades in step with the changing phases of the moon. The fungi do not rely on moonlight for energy, and their glow persists even in complete darkness, making the connection particularly puzzling. One idea is that humidity and temperature shifts driven by lunar tides influence chemical reactions in the fungal tissues, yet some glowing pulses occur without corresponding environmental changes. Another possibility is that the organisms possess internal clocks finely tuned to cycles of night illumination, perhaps as a method of attracting insects that help disperse spores. The glow maps across the fungal network like a slow wave, hinting at communication between different parts of the organism. These light patterns reveal a hidden conversation playing out on the forest floor, one guided by rhythms older than human memory. There are mysterious cold spots in open fields that stay frozen year-round. Hikers exploring certain grassy plains have stumbled across patches of ground that remain icy, even under warm sunlight. These cold spots form isolated pockets where frost clings stubbornly to soil and vegetation long after surrounding areas have thawed. Instruments show sharp temperature drops over only a few footsteps, as if invisible walls hold the cold air in place. The effect persists through seasons, unaffected by typical weather cycles. Some researchers suspect underground channels funneling chilled air upward, while others propose exotic soil compositions that pull heat downward with unusual efficiency. Yet surveys often reveal no consistent pattern in geology, soil chemistry, or topography. Animals tread carefully around the frozen patches, and plants growing within them develop slower, forming miniature ecosystems defined by persistent cold. These frozen islands in open terrain challenge our understanding of local climate, suggesting forces at work beneath the soil that we do not fully understand. The Earth occasionally produces sudden booms from completely clear skies. Across coastlines, forests, and rural plains, people sometimes hear explosive sounds that echo like distant cannon fire, even when the sky is blue and calm. These booms can rattle windows and roll across wide distances, yet weather radar often shows no storms and seismographs detect no tremors. Some events may relate to shifting atmospheric layers snapping into new configurations, but this does not account for the sharp clarity of many reports. Others consider whether distant waves or underwater activity could channel sound upward under rare conditions. Yet clear sky booms also occur far inland, where such explanations lose strength. Historical accounts stretch back centuries, suggesting a recurring natural process rather than isolated anomalies. These sky sounds are reminders that the atmosphere behaves with a complexity still not fully charted, capable of creating acoustic events that appear without warming and leave no trace except the lingering vibration in the air. Some meteor trails pause and brighten, as if interacting with something invisible. Observers scanning night skies have occasionally watched meteors streak across the darkness, only to slow subtly and flare without fragmenting. Instead of a smooth arc of descent, the trail may appear to halt momentarily before resuming its motion. During these pauses, the meteor glows intensely, illuminating surrounding sky in a way that differs from typical burning debris. Scientists tracking these events consider whether meteors can pass through unexpected pockets of dense gas or unusual temperature layers that create temporary resistance. Others propose that specific mineral compositions within the meteor may react explosively at certain altitudes. Yet the brightness and apparent hesitation do not always match predictions. Sometimes multiple meteors from the same shower behave normally, while a single one displays this strange performance. These rare trails suggest that the upper atmosphere contains subtle structures that remain invisible until these brief moments of fiery interaction. There are water pools that never evaporate despite harsh heat. In isolated deserts and high plateaus, explorers have discovered small pools that retain their water through sweltering seasons when nearby sources vanish. These pools sit fully exposed to sunlight, with no shade or fresh inflow, yet their surfaces shrink far less than expected. Measurements show evaporation rates that defy typical calculations, as if something in the water or the pool walls prevents the vapor from escaping. In some cases, the surrounding rock contains minerals that form a thin, invisible layer atop the water, reducing evaporation. Yet other pools lack such mineral signatures and still resist drying. Some are surprisingly cool beneath the surface, hinting at unknown interactions between groundwater and surface water. The persistence of these isolated pools allows unique microhabitats to flourish around them, creating oases where life clings to unlikely refuges. Their endurance under intense heat remains a puzzle waiting to be fully explored. Certain fireflies flash in vast, perfect synchrony across entire forests. In select regions, immense gatherings of fireflies create luminous performances that unfold with breathtaking precision. Hundreds or thousands gather among trees and bushes, then begin flashing in pulses that align flawlessly in time. Entire hillsides light up and darken in unified waves, transforming the night into a coordinated symphony of glow. Scientists studying the insects find that each firefly adjusts its rhythm based on the flashes of its neighbors. Yet the speed and accuracy of the synchronization exceed what simple feedback models predict. Environmental cues such as humidity, temperature, and moonlight influence the display, but they do not fully explain the perfect alignment across large areas. Researchers propose that the insects may sense faint vibrations in addition to light, allowing signals to travel more effectively across distances. These gatherings reveal a mastery of cooperative behavior that seems almost choreographed, turning forests into living lanterns guided by an ancient biological code. Some people experience déjà vu, linked to places they have never visited. While déjà vu often arises from familiar surroundings, some individuals report the eerie sensation in places entirely unknown to them. They step into a new street or building and feel an overwhelming recognition, as if they have stepped into a memory that never belonged to their conscious mind. Neuroscientists exploring this phenomenon examine how the brain retrieves and processes spatial information. In many cases, faint similarities between layouts or lighting conditions may trigger overlapping neural pathways. Yet there are experiences that resist such explanations, where the architecture, scents, and specific details produce a sense of certainty too strong to attribute to coincidence. Some researchers consider whether fragments of dreams or subconscious impressions blend with waking perception. Others explore whether the brain sometimes constructs predictive models so accurately that recognition feels instantaneous. These moments remind us that memory and perception intertwine in ways still not fully mapped. Ancient civilizations built walls with stones so precise they seem grown, not carved. In several archaeological sites around the world, massive stone blocks fit together with uncanny accuracy, forming walls so tightly joined that even thin blades cannot pass between them. The stones often possess irregular shapes, yet they interlock with a complexity that suggests a deep understanding of geometry. Some blocks weigh many tons, and moving them would have required remarkable coordination. Researchers propose that generations of artisans honed techniques that combined shaping, polishing, and testing stones until the perfect fit was achieved. Others investigate whether heat, moisture, or subtle abrasives helped create these seamless joints. The precision remains astonishing, especially when tools from the period show no obvious way to produce such refinement. These ancient structures stand as quiet monuments to craftsmanship that challenges modern assumptions about past capabilities, offering glimpses into forgotten skills grounded in patience, observation, mastery of stone. There are mountains where shadows move independently of light. Hikers in certain remote ranges have watched dark shapes slide across rock faces, even when the sun remains steady and clouds are absent. These wandering shadows move with slow, drifting motion, sometimes gliding uphill or sideways, in ways that natural shading cannot produce. Instruments brought to study the phenomenon record slight changes in air density and temperature that seem to correlate with the movements, though not in ways predicted by standard atmospheric models. In some locations, the shapes appear only at specific times of year, hinting at interactions between ground heat, slope angle, and thin layers of moving air. Yet the shadows often maintain sharper edges than such gradients would normally generate. Their strange behavior leaves observers with the sense that the landscape is hosting silent currents that bend light in ways not fully understood. These roaming patches of darkness bring an uncanny quality to otherwise ordinary mountainsides. Deep space contains dark clouds that absorb nearly all light, yet emit none. Astronomers scanning the Milky Way occasionally encounter immense patches of darkness where stars should be visible. These regions swallow starlight so completely that even powerful telescopes struggle to see through them. Unlike glowing nebulae or dusty star-forming regions, these dark clouds do not shine, do not reflect nearby illumination, and do not reveal themselves through heat unless examined with the most sensitive instruments. They drift like silent voids, masking entire stretches of sky. Inside them may be the raw materials for new stars, or perhaps structures so cold and dense that even infrared wavelengths barely escape. Some appear to shift shape over time, yet no internal light ever emerges. Their presence suggests that the galaxy contains hidden chambers of material that interact with radiation in ways still not fully understood. In these deep pockets of darkness, cosmic history gathers quietly, waiting for conditions that may someday ignite new light. Certain whales sing melodies that change entirely from year to year. In the open ocean, some whale populations produce haunting songs that evolve in surprising ways. A melody that dominates one season may vanish the next, replaced by a completely new arrangement that spreads rapidly through the group. These changes unfold like cultural shifts, with individuals learning and adapting phrases as if participating in a shared musical tradition. The transformations can be sweeping, involving new rhythms, altered pitches, and entirely different sequences that bear little resemblance to earlier versions. Scientists studying these patterns find that the songs can travel across vast distances, spreading among populations that rarely meet. The reasons for these dramatic changes remain uncertain. Some believe the songs help establish identity or attract mates, while others think the animals may simply explore new acoustic possibilities. The fluidity of these melodies reveals an unexpected creativity in marine communication, hinting at a complex and dynamic culture unfolding beneath the waves. There are valleys where electronic devices fail without magnetic influence. Travelers in certain isolated regions report that cameras, radios, and navigation tools suddenly malfunction, as if the surrounding landscape interferes with their operation. These failures do not follow the patterns associated with magnetic anomalies. Compasses remain steady, yet digital devices flicker, freeze, or shut down entirely. When scientists investigate, they sometimes detect unusual electrical gradients in the air or soil, but the values are rarely strong enough to explain the widespread disruptions. Some valleys are shaped in ways that trap pockets of ionized air, while others may channel faint atmospheric electricity along rock layers that act as natural conduits. The effect can occur abruptly, then vanish only a few meters away, creating invisible boundaries where technology simply stops functioning. These peculiar zones remind us that modern tools depend on delicate balances that nature can disturb with quiet precision. The valleys keep their secrets hidden within subtle interactions of terrain and air. Some auroras form shapes that look like living creatures. On rare nights, the sky fills with auroral light that arranges itself into forms startlingly reminiscent of animals or figures. Observers have described serpent-like ribbons, winged silhouettes, and shapes that appear to glide across the horizon with uncanny grace. These displays differ from the usual curtains and arcs. Their edges sharpen and shift as if guided by an invisible hand. High-altitude cameras reveal that charged particles follow intricate magnetic pathways, sculpted by Earth's ever-changing field. Yet some formations hold their shape long enough to evoke deliberate design. The colors may pulse through the figure, giving the impression of movement or breathing. Scientists emphasize that the resemblance is coincidental, shaped by atmospheric currents and field lines, but the visual effect remains powerful. These luminous forms turn the sky into a living canvas, where natural forces momentarily paint scenes that feel almost mythic in their vivid detail. The human body occasionally produces sudden heat bursts that defy explanation. Medical reports describe rare moments when individuals experience abrupt surges of warmth that radiate outward through the torso or limbs with no clear cause. These bursts can occur during rest, sleep, or calm activity, and they rise far faster than normal metabolic changes would allow. The heat feels concentrated, as though energy has pooled and released all at once. Thermal imaging sometimes captures brief spikes, but the events are too unpredictable for systematic study. Scientists explore possibilities ranging from unusual nerve misfires to momentary vascular patterns that rush warm blood to specific regions. Yet many episodes do not match known physiological behavior. The bursts leave no damage and fade as suddenly as they arrive. They suggest that the body contains mechanisms capable of rapid internal shifts, still not completely understood. Each unexplained moment challenges our assumptions about the limits of human biology. Certain forests generate sweet scents with no plant source. Visitors in some woodland areas have reported the sudden appearance of delicate aromas, reminiscent of honey, fruit, or flowering herbs, drifting through the air even when no blooming plants are present. These fragrances can appear in cool seasons, during rain, or in regions where the local flora does not produce such scents. Instruments detect faint chemical traces, yet the compounds often do not match known tree emissions. Some researchers suggest that soil microbes may release aromatic molecules under specific moisture or temperature conditions. Others consider whether decaying organic material could produce ephemeral notes rarely strong enough to reach human senses. The scents sometimes drift in gentle waves, arriving and disappearing like passing spirits. They reveal that forests host chemical worlds layered beneath the visible one, filled with subtle interactions between organisms, soil, and air. The fragrances act as fleeting reminders of the hidden alchemy unfolding in living ecosystems. There are stones that move slowly across desert floors without wind. On cracked, barren lake beds in several deserts, stones carve long trails through the sediment as if sliding across the surface under their own power. Some stones shift only a few centimeters, while others travel many meters over time. Their movements occur silently, often without witnesses, leaving behind meandering paths that document their slow journeys. For years, wind was considered the primary cause, yet many stones move on perfectly calm days, and some trails curve in ways difficult to explain with simple gusts. Recent studies suggest that thin sheets of ice may form under rare conditions, allowing rocks to glide with minimal force. However, not all locations experience the necessary freezing temperatures, and some trails appear in regions where ice is unlikely. These wandering stones demonstrate that even the simplest landscapes can hold mysteries shaped by delicate interactions of moisture, temperature, and terrain. Some rivers reverse flow briefly for no geological reason. In certain remote areas, observers have watched river currents stall, pause, and suddenly push upstream for brief moments before returning to normal. These reversals can occur without tides, landslides, or obvious changes in water volume. Instruments placed in affected regions show that pressure waves may travel through the water column from distant disturbances, yet many reversals take place when no such events are recorded. Local topography may create rare conditions where trapped air pockets or subsurface springs temporarily overpower the main flow. In other cases, subtle atmospheric pressure changes may press on the water surface in ways that create momentary upstream movement. The reversals last only seconds or minutes, leaving behind ripples that move against the natural direction of the river. These transient motions reveal that waterways respond to hidden forces that rarely align but can briefly override the familiar pull of gravity. The atmosphere sometimes creates spiral clouds in clear weather. On days when the sky appears smooth and blue, unusual spiral formations sometimes emerge as thin, curling ribbons that twist into perfect coils. They can form high above ground, drifting slowly while maintaining their graceful shape. These spirals differ from familiar vortex clouds produced by storms. Instead, they appear under calm conditions, often where no visible weather system exists. Satellite images show that tiny pockets of rotating air can develop in stable layers, sculpting moisture into tightly wound patterns. Some spirals stretch across long distances, while others remain compact, like delicate signatures written in vapor. Their creation involves a balance between temperature, humidity, and wind shear so subtle that the smallest disturbance can erase them. These atmospheric spirals remind us that the sky is full of quiet motions that leave only fleeting traces of their passage. There are caves where echoes return in completely different pitches. Explorers in certain cavern systems have noticed that shouts, claps, or spoken words bounce back with tones that do not match the original sound. Instead of a simple reflection, the echo may return as a lower hum, a higher note, or a musical chord that seems to rise from within the cave itself. The geometry of these caverns can create acoustic chambers that shape sound in complex ways, bending and layering vibrations until the returning echo bears little resemblance to the initial noise. Some caves contain mineral surfaces that amplify specific frequencies, while others have branching tunnels that delay certain tones and speed others, creating harmonic distortions. The resulting echoes feel alive, responding with voices that seem to originate from unseen depths. These acoustic anomalies transform ordinary sound into strange music, revealing hidden architectures that only the returning vibrations can fully explore. Some seeds germinate only under extremely rare cosmic conditions. Botanists studying deep soil samples and ancient plant lineages have found seeds that remain dormant for astonishing spans of time, waiting for cues so specific that they almost never occur. These seeds can sit inert through heat, drought, flooding, and freezing, yet remain alive, carrying their potential quietly through the years. When researchers attempt to awaken them, conventional triggers such as moisture, warmth, or nutrients often fail. In a few documented cases, germination occurs only after unusual combinations of atmospheric pressure, magnetic activity, and light qualities reach a precise alignment. Some seeds sprout only during nights with particular sky brightness, hinting at a sensitivity to cosmic conditions that plants do not normally exhibit. Laboratory simulations can sometimes coax them into growth, but only by recreating extremely delicate environmental patterns that echo rare natural events. These enigmatic seeds demonstrate that life can anchor itself to rhythms stretching far beyond ordinary seasons, responding to influences that link Earth to the wider universe. Deep ocean sensors detect regular pulses like a planetary heartbeat. Instruments anchored in the deep sea record slow, steady pulses that sweep through the water column with quiet consistency. These pulses occur at intervals too long to match waves or tides, yet too rhythmic to be dismissed as random noise. They drift across entire ocean basins, rising and falling with a gentleness that resembles the beat of a vast, unseen organ. Some researchers think they may originate from interactions between deep currents and underwater ridges, while others consider whether subtle gravitational influences shape them. The pulses can shift slightly with seasons, but the core rhythm remains intact over long spans of observation. They appear strongest in the stillness of the abyss, where light never reaches and pressures rise to unimaginable levels. These recurring signals hint at large-scale processes that knit together distant regions of the ocean, suggesting that Earth's waters carry internal tempos guided by forces still being uncovered. There are lightning strikes that travel upward from the ground in silence. While most lightning cascades downward from storm clouds, rare upward strikes begin at the surface and shoot skyward with astonishing speed. These events unfold so quickly that many observers never notice the initial spark rising from the ground. Instead, they see only the faint afterglow above. Even more surprising, some of these upward strikes occur with barely any sound. No thunder follows, leaving only the bright path carved into the sky. Scientists believe that tall structures can trigger these silent strikes when electrical charges build to extreme levels. In open landscapes, they may arise from sudden imbalances in atmospheric fields that briefly realign to send energy upward. High-speed cameras reveal complex branching structures in these upward bolts, but their silence remains one of their strangest traits. They demonstrate that lightning can behave as a two-way phenomenon, shaped by delicate shifts in the electrical tension between Earth and sky. Certain lakes form perfect hexagonal ice patterns naturally. During very cold winters, a handful of remote lakes develop ice surfaces marked by geometric designs. Visitors find vast fields of interlocking hexagons that stretch across the frozen water like a giant crystalline mosaic. These shapes are so precise that they resemble patterns crafted by artists rather than produced by nature. Scientists studying the phenomenon discover that thin layers of ice can fracture and refreeze in ways that distribute stress evenly across the surface. Under ideal conditions, the stress lines align into repeating hexagonal forms. Yet some lakes produce patterns so clean and consistent that current models struggle to replicate them. The effect might be influenced by mineral content, salinity, or subtle currents flowing just beneath the ice. Whatever the mechanism, the frozen lattices display a mathematical elegance rarely seen in natural systems, revealing that even the coldest environments can generate intricate beauty. Some people hear untraceable melodies during magnetic storms. When solar activity intensifies, a small number of individuals report hearing faint musical tones drifting through the air. These sounds do not resemble ringing in the ears or internal noise. Instead, they resemble distant flutes, gentle choirs, or sustained notes that seem to arrive from the surrounding environment. Instruments placed nearby detect no actual sound waves, leaving the origin of the melodies uncertain. Some researchers suggest that rapid shifts in Earth's magnetic field during solar storms may influence neural activity in ways that create the perception of external sound. Others propose that atmospheric electricity might affect tiny sensory structures in the inner ear. The melodies can last for moments or minutes, then vanish completely when magnetic conditions stabilize. These mysterious experiences remind us that human perception depends on delicate electrical signals, and under unusual circumstances, the mind may translate cosmic disturbances into feeting-ki, harmonies. Forest floors sometimes create soft, radiant glows after heavy rain. In certain woodlands, the ground emits a gentle twilight glow following intense rainfall. The light rises from patches of soil rather than from familiar glowing fungi. It spreads across leaf litter in soft waves, bright enough to notice yet too faint to illuminate surroundings. When scientists collect samples, they sometimes find chemical interactions between decaying organic matter and minerals that release energy as weak luminescence. However, the glow often appears in patterns that shift over minutes, suggesting a more dynamic process at work. Some areas brighten while others fade, creating a subtle choreography of radiance beneath the canopy. Temperature, moisture, and microbial activity all play roles, but no single explanation fully accounts for the movement of the light. The glowing patches add a gentle enchantment to the forest, revealing hidden reactions that awaken only when rainwater stirs the chemistry of the soil. There are high plateaus where time perception shifts for visitors. Travelers to specific high-altitude regions report that minutes feel unusually long or short. Activities seem to unfold at different speeds, and conversations may feel stretched or condensed in ways that leave a lasting impression. This distortion does not stem from fatigue or altitude sickness alone. Even well-acclimated visitors experience the effect. Researchers exploring these reports consider how low oxygen levels, unusual air ionization, or strong winds might influence neural processing. Yet some plateaus exhibit the phenomenon even under mild, comfortable conditions. Electrical measurements reveal fluctuations in atmospheric conductivity, and some propose that these subtle variations influence brainwave patterns. The result is a temporary shift in how external events are perceived, creating a sensation that time itself has changed its stride. These regions highlight that perception depends on more than clocks or suns. It arises from the delicate balance between the body and the surrounding air. Some snowfields sparkle with moving lights that are not reflections. In frigid landscapes, observers sometimes notice tiny glimmers drifting across snowbanks, even when no external light source is present. These lights shift with slow, deliberate motion, distinct from simple reflections. When examined closely, the sparkles appear to originate from within the snow itself. Scientists analyzing samples discover specialized ice crystals that trap pockets of air in unusual configurations. Under specific temperatures, the trapped air can refract even faint ambient light into concentrated points of brightness. Yet some moving sparkles persist even during overcast nights, suggesting that internal chemical or electrical processes may play a role. The lights wander across the surface like miniature lanterns, creating an otherworldly scene in silent, frozen fields. These delicate glimmers remind observers that even familiar winter landscapes can hold secrets shaped by the unique properties of ice. Desert sands occasionally emit soft, booming tones. Some dunes sing when they shift. Others boom with surprising clarity, filling the air with deep, resonant tones that seem to rise from the heart of the sand. These sounds occur when avalanches of dry grains tumble down steep slopes under very specific conditions. The grains must be nearly identical in size, coated with a thin layer of silica and packed in a way that allows them to vibrate together. When the movement begins, the vibration travels through the dune like a giant instrument. Yet not all booming dunes follow the same rules. Some produce tones under humidity levels that should silence them. Others emit sounds with shifting pitches that defy simple models. These desert voices reveal the hidden musicality of granular matter, showing that even the quietest landscapes can become resonant under the right combinations of warmth, dryness, and motion. There are storms that suddenly change direction against all winds. Meteorologists tracking certain unusual storms have witnessed abrupt shifts in movement that disregard surrounding air currents. A storm may drift predictably, then veer sharply as if tugged sideways by an invisible force. These deviations can occur during mature stages of the storm, not during chaotic formation. Atmospheric models struggle to recreate such turns because the local winds offer no pathway that explains the motion. Some researchers consider whether temperature boundaries or gravity waves might create temporary corridors of altered flow. Others propose that internal dynamics within the storm system can generate bursts of momentum strong enough to override surrounding patterns. These rare directional changes highlight the subtle complexity of atmospheric systems, revealing that storms carry hidden engines capable of steering themselves in ways that challenge conventional understanding. Certain mountain peaks emit warm air in the dead of winter. Climbers ascending specific summits have encountered pockets of unexpectedly warm air rising from the rock, as though the mountain were exhaling. These flows can be strong enough to melt frost along the slopes, leaving bare streaks in otherwise frozen landscapes. Instruments placed near the vents detect temperatures far above the surrounding atmosphere, yet the heat emerges without volcanic activity, geothermal fields, or visible cracks in the rock. Some researchers believe that intricate networks of air channels inside the mountain may store warmth during sunny periods, releasing it later through narrow fissures. Others suspect deep internal friction created by subtle rock movements might generate additional heat. Yet these theories do not fully explain the steady warmth that persists even during long periods without sunlight. The rising air feels strangely gentle, as if the mountain harbors hidden pockets of stored energy that surface only when winter grips the land most tightly. The ocean sometimes forms perfect circles of foam with no current. At certain coastlines and open sea locations, observers have found flawless rings of foam drifting atop calm water. These circles can span several meters or more, holding their shape for surprising lengths of time without breaking apart. They do not align with known currents, nor do they spin like whirlpools. Instead, they rest motionless, as though drawn with a precise hand. Scientists studying the phenomenon propose that underwater vortices may rise gently enough to shape the foam without disturbing the surface. Others note that subtle interactions between salinity layers can create circular boundaries that trap floating material. Yet many rings form where such layers should not exist, and their smooth symmetry exceeds what random movement would typically produce. These quiet formations invite contemplation, revealing the delicate patterns that appear when the ocean arranges itself according to forces still being mapped. There are glowing clouds that appear long after sunset. Night watchers sometimes spot clouds illuminated by a faint, ghostly light, even when the sun has long vanished beyond the horizon. These luminous forms hang high in the atmosphere, shimmering with soft whites or pale blues. They drift slowly, glowing in ways that do not match the familiar colors of the aurora. Scientists classify some as noctilucent clouds, composed of tiny ice crystals catching sunlight from angles that the ground can no longer see. Yet other glowing formations appear too low or too bright to fit this explanation. Some may reflect distant sources of light, while others seem to possess their own subtle radiance, brightening and fading in patterns unrelated to city glow or moonlight. Their presence suggests that the upper layers of the atmosphere host optical mysteries shaped by temperature, dust, and unknown interactions of light. Some coral reefs pulse with light in complex waves. Divers exploring certain reefs have witnessed faint luminescent pulses moving across coral colonies, like underwater tides of color. These waves are not the flashes of bioluminescent plankton drifting through the water. Instead, the illumination arises from the corals themselves. Tiny cells embedded in their tissues release brief bursts of light, but travel from one colony to the next in a coordinated sequence. The pasms shift with surprising intricacy, forming arcs, spirals, or gentle ripples that sweep across entire reef sections. Researchers believe the pulses may serve as communication signals triggered by changes in water chemistry, pressure, or predators. Yet the speed and complexity of the displays suggest a deeper system of coordination. The reefs appear to send messages through light, revealing an almost neurological organization woven into living stone. The human mind occasionally predicts events with impossible accuracy. Accounts from researchers, clinicians, and ordinary people describe moments when individuals sense future outcomes with a clarity that defies coincidence. These impressions do not arise from vague feelings. Instead, they come as vivid flashes of certainty about specific events, locations, or actions that later unfold exactly as perceived. Studies examining these experiences find no consistent link to stress, imagination, or suggestibility. Some theorists propose that the mind unconsciously gathers tiny cues that collectively shape accurate predictions. Others investigate whether memory and intuition can momentarily align in ways that produce unusually precise insights. Yet many cases involve details too specific to derive from subtle clues. These rare experiences hint that the brain may possess capacities for pattern recognition that operate beneath conscious awareness, revealing glimpses of outcomes before they occur. Certain rivers hum deep vibrations that can be felt but not heard. Along the banks of particular waterways, visitors describe a subtle trembling beneath their feet, as though the river carries a resonant energy below the threshold of sound. Touching nearby rocks reveals faint pulses that repeat with surprising steadiness. Hydrophones lowered into the current capture low-frequency vibrations that hover just below human hearing. The source of the hum may involve interactions between water flow, riverbed geometry, and underlying geology, creating long, continuous waves that travel through both water and stone. Yet some rivers produce these tones even when their flow appears calm, suggesting additional influences from underground springs or shifting sediments. The hum moves with the river, adjusting slightly as water levels rise and fall. It feels like a quiet voice carried within the current, a reminder that rivers speak in frequencies we rarely perceive. There are plants that react strongly to human emotion. Experiments conducted in controlled environments sometimes reveal unexpected responses in certain plants when humans nearby experience strong feelings. Electrical signals measured across their leaves and roots shift rapidly during moments of fear, joy, or stress, even when the plants remain untouched. These reactions do not follow simple environmental changes such as heat or humidity. Instead, they appear correlated with emotional states that should not be detectable by vegetation. Some scientists attribute the responses to subtle changes in human breathing or microelectrical fields, while others study whether plants possess sensory mechanisms more attuned to their surroundings, previously believed. The reactions do not occur in all species, nor do they follow consistent patterns, making them difficult to reproduce. Yet the strongest examples hint that life may communicate through channels more complex than sight or sound, operating through networks of sensitivity still being uncovered. Some thunderstorms produce light that spirals upward. During rare weather events, observers have seen luminous spirals rising from storm clouds, twisting upward like rotating columns of light. These displays differ from lightning, which normally forks downward or spreads horizontally. Instead, the spirals grow taller and brighter as they climb into the sky. High-speed imagery shows swirling patterns that resemble rotating ribbons illuminated from within. Scientists suggest that powerful updrafts may twist charged particles into helical paths, generating visible trails. Yet these spirals occur even in storms, lacking the necessary rotational forces. Their silence makes them even more perplexing, as they appear without thunder or the crackling sound typical of electrical discharge. They rise gracefully, like luminous stairways ascending into the night. The deep Earth contains zones where gravity weakens unnaturally. Geophysicists mapping Earth's gravitational field have discovered regions where the pull of gravity dips slightly more than expected, creating pockets where objects weigh just a little less. These anomalies do not correspond neatly with underground caves, mineral deposits, or dense rock layers. Instead, they appear in patterns that challenge straightforward geological explanation. Instruments flown over these areas detect smooth depressions in gravitational strength, as though the Earth beneath contains subtle gaps or structures with unusual density. Some theories propose remnants of ancient tectonic collisions or hidden reservoirs of light rock pushed deep into the mantle. Yet no single model accounts for all observed anomalies. These weakened zones reveal that the planet still holds internal architectures that remain beyond our direct reach. Certain fish navigate pitch-black waters with unknown senses. In the deepest ocean trenches, fish thrive in conditions where no sunlight penetrates and bioluminescent cues are scarce. Yet these creatures navigate complex terrain with precision, avoiding obstacles, locating prey, and communicating with one another in total darkness. Some rely on pressure-sensitive organs, while others possess specialized lateral lines that detect tiny movements in the water. Yet in several species, the behaviors observed exceed what these known senses should allow. They swim through labyrinthine canyons with confidence, assemble in coordinated groups, and change directions in perfect unison even when no detectable signal is present. Researchers suspect that these fish may sense electromagnetic fields, water chemistry changes, or vibrations far too faint for current instruments to measure. Their silent mastery of the abyss suggests a world of perception still hidden from our understanding. There are islands that drift slightly without geological cause. Sailors and surveyors sometimes return to charts, only to find that small islands no longer sit quite where they should. Measurements taken years apart reveal tiny but persistent shifts, as if the land has glided a short distance across the water without clear tectonic activity. These are not floating mats of vegetation or ice, and not the usual migrating sandbars that appear and vanish. Some of the drifting landforms contain solid rock, stable soil, and established plant life. Satellite data occasionally confirms that shorelines and central reference points have migrated in ways that do not match standard erosion or uplift. A few explanations point to slow, deep-seated slumping of submerged sediments, where entire blocks of seafloor creep sideways, carrying islands with them, like passengers on a hidden conveyor. Yet many observed motions do not align with known fault lines or slope failures. The result is a quiet mystery of wandering land, where maps lag behind a planet that apparently rearranges itself with more fluidity than we once believed. Some glowing mists move as if alive. In marshes, valleys, and abandoned fields, witnesses sometimes describe soft clouds of light drifting close to the ground in complete silence. These mists do not behave like simple reflections or car headlights. They gather, separate, and change direction with a slowness that feels strangely deliberate, curling around obstacles or pausing over pools of water. Their glow can range from pale blue to gentle green, bright enough to notice yet too faint to cast clear shadows. Scientists investigating such reports consider natural gases that might ignite into cool flames, or bioluminescent organisms stirred into the air by unseen currents. Yet many accounts occur in places without known gas emissions or dense insect swarms. The mists ignore wind patterns, moving against breezes or holding position while grass and trees sway around them. They appear most often on humid nights when the air feels heavy and charged. Watching them, people often describe the eerie sense that something is exploring the landscape through light itself. The atmosphere creates sudden flashes of light above thunderstorms, High above powerful storm clouds, cameras aboard aircraft and satellites sometimes capture brief expansions of brightness that bloom and vanish in the thin air. These flashes spread outward like vast flattened halos, or erupt as towering columns that reach toward the edge of space. They are too swift and too faint for most observers on the ground, yet sensitive instruments reveal intricate shapes rippling through upper layers of air. The events occur when electric fields inside a storm push charges upward, triggering reactions far above the main lightning bolts. Some structures resemble expanding disks, others delicate crowns of color that wrap around invisible boundaries. They are not auroras and not ordinary lightning, but a separate family of phenomena that appear only when conditions inside clouds reach extreme imbalance. Each event lasts less than a heartbeat, leaving only frames of data and lingering questions about how energy travels through the highest reaches of weather. Certain mountains produce metallic scents before weather changes. Hikers in specific ranges sometimes notice an abrupt shift in smell that arrives before storms, heat waves, or sudden cold fronts. A dry, metallic tang settles over the slopes, distinct from soil, flowers, or snow. It clings to the air even when no rain has fallen and no lightning has struck. Researchers exploring these regions have measured subtle releases of trace gases from fractured rock, which may increase when air pressure or humidity begins to change. Some minerals can oxidize rapidly under shifting conditions, exhaling faint but distinctive aromas. The shape of the mountain may trap these scents in sheltered basins, concentrating them just enough for human noses. In a few locations, the metallic note appears even before instruments detect major atmospheric shifts, suggesting that rock and air exchange signals with surprising sensitivity. For those who know the mountains well, the smell becomes an early whisper of weather yet to arrive. There are forests where trees lean in the same direction without wind. In certain woodlands, trunks that should grow straight instead tilt together as though bowing toward some invisible influence. The lean is not the gentle curve found on windy coasts or steep slopes. Instead, nearly every tree in a large area inclines at a similar angle, all pointing the same way. Soil analysis sometimes shows minor subsidence, but not enough to explain the coordinated growth. There is no evidence of prevailing winds strong enough to sculpt such uniform shapes. Some theories suggest that slow, persistent ground movement nudges saplings during early years, teaching them to grow along an easy path of least resistance. Others propose that deep water flows or buried layers with different densities may create gravitational quirks that influence growth directions. Whatever the cause, walking among these trees feels like entering a forest caught mid-gesture, as if the entire stand has quietly decided to lean toward something just beyond human perception. Ancient rock art shows patterns seen in modern astronomical data. Archaeologists studying carvings and paintings from long-vanished cultures sometimes encounter intricate symbols that resemble structures now observed in the sky with telescopes. Spirals, branching streams, and clustered points appear in arrangements that echo modern images of star fields, comets, or eclipses. In some cases, the patterns capture rare celestial events that occur only a few times in many lifetimes. This suggests that observers not only noticed these displays, but tracked and remembered them with remarkable care. While some motifs can be explained as abstract or ritual designs, others align closely with specific planetary motions or seasonal alignments now confirmed by precise measurements. The match between ancient marks on stone and current numerical models hints at an observational tradition far deeper than casual stargazing. Without advanced instruments, these early skywatchers appear to have mapped rhythms of heaven with naked eyes, patient records, and cultural memory stretching across generations. Certain insects navigate with precision beyond known biological limits. Tiny flyers with brains smaller than grains of rice perform journeys that challenge our understanding of sensory ability. They travel across vast fields, dense forests, and intricate networks of vegetation, returning unerringly to nests or feeding sites hidden from view. Experiments show that some species can be displaced far from their usual routes and still correct their heading within moments, choosing the exact direction that leads home. They do so in conditions where familiar cues like sun position, scent trails, or visual landmarks are weak or absent. Researchers have discovered internal compasses, polarized light sensors, and memory circuits in these bodies, yet their combined power still seems insufficient to explain this uncanny skill. The insects adjust for wind drift, changing terrain, and shifting light without measurable hesitation. Watching them, scientists are reminded that intelligence and precision can flourish in forms that look almost impossibly small. Some people wake moments before distant earthquakes. Scattered accounts tell of individuals who bolt awake in the quiet of night with an unshakable sense that something large and unseen is about to happen. Minutes later, far away, an earthquake begins to unfold. These sleepers have no radios humming nearby, no obvious vibrations reaching their homes. The tremors are often too distant to explain the timing through simple physical cues. When patterns are examined over years, a few individuals appear to experience these awakenings more than chance would predict. Researchers have proposed that tiny foreshocks, infrasound, or electromagnetic fluctuations might reach them earlier than noticeable shaking. The human nervous system is exquisitely sensitive, and under rare conditions, it may register faint environmental changes that never rise into full awareness until the body jolts awake. Even so, controlled studies struggle to capture the effect. The episodes remain enigmatic, nested at the border between physiology and the deep movements of the planet. The ocean contains whispering currents that carry sound unusually far. Far below the surface, layers of water with specific combinations of temperature and salinity can form thin pathways where sound travels with remarkable efficiency. A whisper at one end of such a channel can be detectable hundreds of kilometers away, while noises outside the layer fade quickly. Submerged instruments have recorded whale songs, ship engines, and even small underwater events arriving from astonishing distances, all guided along these natural acoustic corridors. The currents within these layers move quietly, carrying not just water but information. Slight changes in pressure, climate, or circulation can stretch, bend, or break the channels, altering how far a sound can journey. These hidden paths reveal that the sea has its own communication highways, threading the darkness with vibrations that connect distant regions. Through them, animals and human devices alike tap into a subtle network that links far corners of the oceanic world. Some volcanoes create ice crystals with intricate symmetric forms. During explosive eruptions in cold conditions, towering plumes of ash and gas rise high into frigid air, where moisture freezes around microscopic particles. Within this chaotic mixture, delicate crystals can grow in shapes that rival the complexity of snowflakes, yet differ in their exact geometry. Aircraft and sampling balloons have captured fragments that show branching arms, nested plates, and sharp ridges arranged with astonishing symmetry. The combination of mineral dust, rapid cooling, and turbulent motion seems to encourage exotic patterns rarely seen in ordinary clouds. Each crystal preserves a fleeting moment in the life of the plume, a record of temperature and humidity etched in fragile ice. As they fall, many melt or shatter, returning to simpler forms. Only a small fraction survive long enough to be studied. These transient sculptures remind us that even within violent eruptions, nature finds chances to build structures of extraordinary order and beauty. There are valleys where voices carry farther than physics predicts. In certain valleys around the world, a whisper spoken on one slope can travel astonishing distances, reaching listeners far beyond what normal acoustics allow. These landscapes amplify sound in ways that defy simple explanations. The terrain often appears unremarkable, with gentle inclines and open air that should scatter sound instead of preserving it. Yet voices move through these places with uncanny clarity, as if the air itself has become a resonant instrument. Measurements reveal temperature layers stacked in just the right configuration to trap sound and guide it along invisible corridors. However, these layers shift too frequently to fully explain the consistency of reports. Some valleys support this effect even during turbulent weather, when temperature gradients should break apart. Others carry sound across bends and obstacles that should absorb or distort it. The phenomenon creates an atmosphere of quiet wonder, where human speech gains unexpected reach, allowing stories, songs, and murmurs to float across the land with gentle precision. Certain animals change behavior on nights with rare atmospheric conditions. Field researchers have documented unusual behavior among specific species during nights when the atmosphere develops uncommon electrical or chemical properties. Animals that normally remain hidden may emerge and move with restless urgency, while others freeze in place as though sensing something humans cannot detect. Some creatures shift feeding times, change vocal patterns, or alter migration paths only on nights marked by subtle changes in air conductivity or faint fluctuations in ambient fields. These behaviors do not match typical responses to moonlight, temperature, or predators. Instead, they arise during atmospheric conditions so rare that instruments must be finely tuned to detect them. Scientists suspect that specialized sensory organs might register these faint cues, triggering instinctive reactions that have little to do with the visible environment. These moments reveal that animals experience the world through layers of perception largely inaccessible to human awareness, responding to atmospheric subtleties that pass over us without notice. The human brain occasionally generates light flashes seen with eyes closed. People sometimes report brief bursts of brightness behind closed eyelids, appearing as flickers, arcs, or tiny sparks of illumination. These flashes are not reflections from external light, nor afterimages from visual stimulation. Instead, they arise from within the brain itself. Neurologists believe that spontaneous electrical activity in the visual cortex may create these inner lights when neurons fire in coordinated bursts. The flashes tend to occur during deep relaxation, transitions into sleep, or moments of intense concentration. Some individuals experience them during meditation, when the mind becomes unusually still. Although common in mild forms, intense or clearly shaped flashes remain rare and difficult to study because they vanish the moment attention shifts outward. This inner light suggests that perception is not entirely tied to the outside world. The brain carries its own quiet sparks, small reminders that the boundary between inner and outer experience is more fluid than it seems. There are sky sounds described as trumpets that have no known source. In various parts of the world, people have heard long, resonant tones drifting from the sky, reminiscent of distant horns or metallic calls. These sounds can last for minutes, changing pitch and intensity, while leaving no physical evidence behind. They often occur on calm days when no storms, fireworks, or industrial activity should produce such noises. Microphones capture the tones, confirming their reality, yet the recordings provide no clues about a specific origin. Atmospheric scientists propose that shifting layers of air may amplify distant noises, bending them over vast distances. However, many of the most striking reports occur in remote places where no human activity exists within hundreds of kilometers. Others consider whether vibrations from upper atmosphere disturbances might produce audible resonance. though instruments often detect nothing unusual. The sounds remain a haunting mystery, appearing unpredictably like the sky itself has begun to sing. Some water sources have temperatures that defy seasonal logic. Hikers have found springs and pools that remain warm in the coldest months and surprisingly cool in periods of intense heat. These sources do not fit the typical patterns of geothermal activity or groundwater flow. Thermal imaging shows pockets of water maintaining steady temperatures despite dramatic environmental shifts. In some cases, the water arrives from underground channels insulated by layers of rock that keep it stable. Yet many of the most puzzling examples lack such geological features. Some springs warm up at night and cool down during the day, reversing natural expectations. Others show abrupt changes in temperature triggered by unknown factors. The consistency of these anomalies suggests an interplay of underground pressure, mineral content, and subtle atmospheric influences. These unusual waters form microclimates that support unexpected plant and animal life, shaping tiny worlds defined by the quiet mystery of their temperature. Ancient monuments align with celestial bodies with incredible precision. Structures built long before modern instruments often display astonishing accuracy in their alignment with stars, solstices, and lunar cycles. Massive stones arranged by early cultures line up perfectly with sunrise on specific days of the year, or with the rising of distant stars that shift slowly across the sky over centuries. These alignments are so precise that even small deviations in placement would have altered the intended sightlines. Archaeologists studying these monuments find evidence that early skywatchers tracked celestial movements across generations, passing knowledge through stories, rituals, and careful observation. While many sites show practical uses for agriculture or ceremony, others reveal alignments so exact that they appear designed to reflect a deep understanding of astronomical rhythms. These structures stand as enduring testaments to ancient curiosity, carved into landscapes with accuracy that still inspires wonder. Some plants glow faintly during intense geomagnetic activity. Under strong geomagnetic conditions, certain plant species exhibit a soft luminescence that rises from their leaves or stems like a quiet shimmer. The glow is faint and often visible only in near darkness. Researchers who have witnessed it note that it appears correlated with periods of heightened magnetic activity in the atmosphere. Experiments show that electrical changes in plant tissues may accelerate chemical reactions that release small bursts of energy in visible wavelengths. Yet many species do not respond this way, and the effect varies widely even among closely related plants. The glow appears unpredictable, flickering gently as if influenced by both the plant's internal chemistry and fluctuations in the surrounding environment. This faint radiance suggests an unseen sensitivity within the living world, where even quiet vegetation responds to forces far above in Earth's magnetic envelope. There are forest clearings that remain untouched by snowfall. During winters in specific regions, snowfall blankets entire forests, while leaving certain clearings strangely bare. These open patches remain free of accumulation even during heavy storms. Observers note that snowflakes seem to melt or vanish before touching the ground, as though a thin veil of warmer air hovers above the soil. Instruments reveal slight temperature differences between the clearing and the surrounding woods, but the variations often seem too small to prevent snow from settling. Some theories suggest that underground springs may release heat that rises gently through the soil. Others point to air circulation patterns created by the shape of the trees that border the clearing. Yet many clearings lack any obvious geothermal or atmospheric explanation. They stand out as untouched islands in a sea of white, forming quiet enclaves shaped by forces that remain hidden. Certain rivers form perfect spirals seen from above. Aerial images occasionally reveal rivers bending into immaculate spiral shapes over long stretches of landscape. These spirals form without human intervention, and maintain smooth curves that resemble patterns in fluid dynamics experiments. Meanders in rivers normally develop through erosion and deposition, but these spirals show a degree of symmetry and consistency rarely found in natural waterways. Scientists studying them note that they often emerge in areas with soft sediment, where slight initial curvatures can evolve into orderly loops. Yet the precision of these spirals exceeds what typical erosion processes produce. Some researchers speculate that vibrations from distant seismic activity or slow tilting of the land might influence the way water carves its path. Whatever the underlying mechanism, these rivers demonstrate that flowing water can become an artist, sketching elegant designs across the earth. Some storm clouds pulse in rhythmic patterns. Time-lapse footage of certain thunderstorm formations reveals distinct waves of brightness rippling through the clouds at regular intervals. These pulses move like slow breaths, expanding and contracting with smooth rhythm. They are not lightning flashes, which burst with sharp intensity. Instead, they appear as coordinated shifts in cloud density or internal illumination. Instruments detect subtle pressure oscillations within the cloud, suggesting that waves of rising and sinking air might create the rhythmic effect. Yet many storms with similar structures never produce these patterns. The pulses often coincide with stable atmospheric layers that allow energy to bounce repeatedly inside the cloud. The result is a gentle visual heartbeat, glowing within towering pillars of vapor. This quiet rhythm offers a glimpse into the complex choreography hidden inside storms, where forces align momentarily to create patterns that drift across the sky in subtle, mesmerizing motion. The deep ocean emits infrared glows with no biological explanation. In the darkest reaches of the sea, far below the last trace of sunlight, sensors have recorded faint warmth that appears in patches, as if invisible lanterns were scattered across the abyss. These glows lie in the infrared, outside human vision, yet they stand out clearly against the surrounding cold. They do not match the patterns of known hydrothermal vents, which usually create broad, obvious plumes. Instead, the worn spots can be small, sharply bounded, and oddly regular in shape. Some appear along featureless plains of sediment, where no volcanic activity is expected. Others flicker over time, brightening and fading without clear connection to tides or earthquakes. Biological sources, such as dense communities of organisms, would leave chemical traces that instruments do not always find. The patches feel more like localized exhalations from the planet, or reactions in deep sediments that have not yet been identified. In a realm where everything should be uniformly frigid, these quiet pockets of heat suggest that the interior of Earth and its ocean skin are linked in ways still largely unexplored. Some people report shared visions during extreme weather. During violent storms, blizzards, or oppressive heat waves, there are accounts of individuals who, without prior contact, describe seeing the same vivid scenes in their mind's eye. These experiences can involve unfamiliar landscapes, symbolic images, or unfolding stories that match across different people with startling detail. The visions arrive suddenly, often at the height of atmospheric turmoil, and leave behind a sense of having briefly stepped into another layer of reality. Neuroscientists note that intense weather can alter air pressure, electrical fields, and even the balance of ions around the body, all of which might influence brain activity. Yet this still does not explain why people separated by distance sometimes report near identical imagery. There is no known signal strong enough or structured enough to carry such complex content. Some suggest that the human mind, under stress, gravitates toward archetypal pictures that happen to align. Others suspect subtle environmental patterns that we have not yet learned to measure. Whatever the cause, these shared inner storms echo the chaos outside, hinting that consciousness might respond collectively to the moods of the sky. There are glaciers that move in sudden jumps rather than slow slides. Most ice rivers creep forward with patient steadiness, inching down slope year after year. Yet a few are known to lurch ahead unexpectedly, advancing by surprising distances and short bursts. These jumps can reshape valleys, crush forests, and alter meltwater channels in a matter of days after long periods of quiet. Instruments show that stress builds inside the ice as it locks against underlying rock, then releases when hidden layers of meltwater suddenly lubricate the base. However, some surging glaciers accelerate far more rapidly than models predict, as if a trigger deep within the ice sets off a chain of changes that races through the whole structure. The internal architecture of crevasses, pockets of liquid, and crystalline fabric may combine to create an unstable balance that holds until a small shift tips everything. During a surge, the glacier almost behaves like a slow avalanche frozen in mid-flow, briefly alive with motion before settling again into apparent calm, leaving behind a landscape rearranged by a force that seems to act in pulses rather than in steady pressure. Certain animals produce sounds no instrument can fully record. In the field, researchers sometimes hear calls that seem to shimmer or bend in ways their microphones struggle to capture. The recordings show fragments of the sound, yet something about the original experience is missing, as if the noise existed partly outside the usual acoustic range. Some species vocalize at frequencies so high or low that only parts of their signals fall within the capabilities of standard sensors. Others appear to combine multiple bands at once, weaving together infrasonic, audible, and ultrasonic components into a complex whole. The physical instruments flatten these layers into simpler traces, losing subtle modulations that the animals themselves might sense with specialized organs. There are reports of tones that feel as much in the body as in the ears, pressing gently on the chest or vibrating in bones while leaving only faint lines on spectrograms. These elusive sounds remind us that our technology, though impressive, still does not fully match the living receivers evolved by other creatures over immense spans of time. The atmosphere creates rare sissified ice that bends light in strange ways. Under exceptional conditions, high in the sky, tiny crystals can grow in forms that depart from familiar snowflake shapes. These sissified pieces of ice possess internal structures that twist or spurt light in unusual directions, acting like countless minute prisms suspended in the air. When sunlight or moonlight passes through such a cloud, halos, arcs, and soft columns can appear where simple optics would not predict them. Observers describe pale rings wrapped tightly around bright sources, rare intersecting curves, or subtle beams that seem to float without touching the sun or moon. Laboratory work suggests that slight impurities or unusual growth rates can alter how ice molecules stack together, creating exotic geometries. However, the exact pathways by which the atmosphere forges these crystals remain unclear, because the conditions are difficult to reproduce and the ice itself is fragile. The sky becomes a laboratory operating at scales and altitudes beyond our direct reach, leaving us to deduce its experiments from fleeting patterns of light. Some deserts form enormous rings of perfectly sorted stones. In remote arid regions, explorers have stumbled upon wide circles where rocks arrange themselves by size, as if organized by an invisible hand. Small pebbles gather in certain bands, larger stones in others, all tracing out rings that can span many paces across the sand. There are no obvious tracks, no signs of human construction, and no recent floods to shuffle the material. Wind can move grains and small fragments, yet the precision of these patterns seems to require a more selective process. Some geologists suspect that repeated cycles of heating and cooling, combined with subtle vibrations from distant seismic activity, may slowly shuffle stones into energy-efficient arrangements. Over countless days and nights, the ground might act like a slow sifter, nudging pieces into positions where forces balance more evenly. Still, a scale and clarity of certain rings resist easy explanation. Standing within one, surrounded by careful order in an otherwise chaotic landscape, feels like stepping into a puzzle that the desert has been quietly solving for ages. There are trees that grow in spiral patterns with no environmental cause. Scattered through certain forests, individual trunks twist gently as they rise, bark and grain following a spiral path from roots to crown. In some groves, nearly every tree of a given species displays this coiling growth, yet the local wind patterns, slope and sunlight offer no obvious reason. The spiral is not the casual curve of a tree compensating for shade, but a consistent, mathematically neat twist that continues along the entire length. Studies show that the internal fibers align with the spiral, influencing how the trunk bears weight and resists stress. Some botanists suggest that genetic variations may predispose these trees to spiral growth, perhaps conferring hidden benefits such as improved resilience to certain kinds of damage. Others look for subtle cues in the local magnetic field or soil composition that might influence developing tissues. The effect is so orderly that it invites comparison to deliberately carved columns, yet it arises silently as the tree adds ring after ring, year after year, following a turning path we still do not fully understand. Certain mountain winds sound like distant voices. In specific passes and along particular ridgelines, gusts can arrive with tonal qualities that uncannily resemble human speech. Travelers hear murmurs, sighs, or phrases that seem to rise and fall like conversation carried from far away, even when no one else is present. The shape of the terrain may funnel air through narrow openings, where eddies and oscillations transform turbulence into organized sound. Rock faces, snowfields, and scattered boulders can act together like the body of a musical instrument, amplifying some frequencies while cancelling others. Yet the resemblance to voices goes beyond simple whistling or howling. Listeners sometimes report cadence and rhythm that feel almost meaningful, though no actual words can be discerned. Instruments detect complex patterns in the airflow, but translating those patterns into a detailed acoustic model that explains every nuance has proved challenging. These murmuring winds remind visitors that landscapes can speak in tones that brush against the boundary between physics and perception, stirring imagination as well as air. Some lakes form underwater dunes that shift in geometric waves. Beneath the still surfaces of certain inland waters, sonar maps reveal sculpted hills of sand arranged in graceful repeating shapes. These underwater dunes can form ridges that march across the lakebed in parallel lines or interlocking patterns, as if the floor were frozen mid-ripple. Unlike dunes sculpted by strong currents in rivers or seas, many of these formations occur in basins where water movement is subtle and seasonal. Gentle internal waves, driven by temperature differences between layers, may slide along boundaries in the lake and nudge grains in slow motion. Over years, this delicate push can coax sediments into regular, organized forms. In some lakes, the dunes appear to migrate over time, their crests shifting in coordinated steps that suggest an unseen rhythm in the water. They are landscapes hidden under calm surfaces, rearranging themselves quietly according to fluid dynamics that only reveal their full elegance when measured from above or mapped with patient care. The ocean contains sudden temperature walls that remain perfectly vertical. Oceanographers deploying instruments sometimes encounter sharp boundaries where water on one side is noticeably warmer or colder than the other, separated not by a gradual gradient, but by what feels like a vertical curtain. These temperature walls can extend from near the surface down to significant depths, maintaining a surprisingly straight profile despite surrounding turbulence. The contrast can be so stark that a swimmer might move from one side to the other and feel an immediate change, as though crossing an invisible doorway. Traditional models expect such differences to smear out quickly as currents mix water masses. Yet in some regions, the walls persist long enough to be mapped and revisited. They may form where narrow jets of water slide past each other, or where subtle features on the seafloor channel flows with minimal blending. These structures can influence nutrient transport, sound propagation, and the paths of marine animals. Their existence hints at fine-scale order within the ocean, hidden planes that partition its interior into compartments more sharply defined than the surface calm would ever suggest. Some people sense magnetic fields with surprising accuracy. A small number of individuals describe a subtle awareness of direction that does not rely on sight, sound, or memory. They can point north, even in complete darkness, or detect when they have turned slightly inside unfamiliar spaces. In controlled settings, some accurately identify shifts in artificial magnetic fields, far too weak to influence ordinary objects. The sensation is often reported as a faint pull, a tilt in awareness, or a quiet inner nudge, rather than a conscious calculation. Neuroscientists have explored whether microscopic magnetite crystals in human tissue might play a role, since similar particles assist navigation in birds and fish. Others consider whether electrical activity in the brain might respond to changing electromagnetic conditions. Yet, no definitive structure or mechanism has been found that fully accounts for the sensitivity. These rare individuals demonstrate that human perception may contain dormant capacities, tuned to environmental cues that most people never notice. There are clouds that emit tones during strong solar activity. During periods of intense space weather, witnesses have heard soft humming or distant harmonic drones, seemingly coming from high above. These tones drift across otherwise quiet skies, rising and falling in step with shimmering cloud formations. Instruments confirm that the air itself vibrates at low frequencies during certain geomagnetic disturbances. Charged particles interacting with the upper atmosphere can create electrical gradients that subtly compress and relax pockets of air, generating faint acoustic waves. However, the tones are unusually smooth and melodious compared to typical atmospheric rumbling. Some clouds appear to pulse in brightness at the same moments the sounds peak, suggesting a link between light scattering and air vibration. Yet many events occur without visible auroras, leaving the clouds glowing faintly while the tones drift downward. The sky seems to sing in response to the sun, offering hints of hidden dialogue between Earth's atmosphere and the charged wind sweeping through space. Certain caves have air currents that reverse direction without warning. Explorers deep within limestone labyrinths sometimes feel a sudden shift in airflow, as if the cave has taken a breath in the opposite direction. These reversals can happen on clear, calm days and may repeat several times within an hour. Traditional explanations point to pressure differences between interior chambers and the outside world, yet many reversals occur even when external conditions remain steady. Some caves possess complex networks of tunnels that create resonant pressure waves, where slight temperature changes cause air to slosh back and forth like water in a hidden basin. Others may contain concealed chimneys leading to elevated openings, allowing air to move unpredictably as temperatures fluctuate at different altitudes. The effect can feel almost alive, with cool flows turning warm or gentle breezes snapping into sudden gusts. Inside these caves, the air behaves less like a passive substance and more like a restless inhabitant, shifting from moment to moment. Some stars dim abruptly in ways that defy astrophysical models. Astronomers studying certain distant stars have observed drastic drops in brightness that occur without warning and recover just as mysteriously. These dimming events are far too deep to be caused by orbiting planets and too irregular to match the patterns of eclipsing companions. Dust clouds could explain some behavior, Yet the timing and scale of many dips appear inconsistent with simple dust movement. Spectra taken during dim periods show unusual shifts, hinting that changes may be happening within the stars themselves or in structures very close to them. Some stars appear to shed or rearrange material at unpredictable intervals. Others may possess swirling fields of debris shaped by processes not yet understood. Each event challenges existing models of how stars evolve and interact with their surroundings, suggesting that stellar systems may host forms of variability that have remained hidden until long observation revealed their strange signatures. The Earth generates rare luminous phenomena above fault lines. During moments of deep tectonic stress, some regions produce gentle glows that hover above the ground or flare briefly along rocky ridges. These lights differ from lightning and lack the sharp intensity of electrical discharges. Instead, they appear as floating orbs, pale sheets, or flickering tongues of color rising from the Earth itself. Researchers suspect that quartz-rich rocks under pressure may release bursts of electrical energy when microscopic fractures form. This energy could ionize surrounding air, causing it to glow. Yet many sightings occur without recorded seismic events or appear hours before tremors begin. The phenomena vary in color, shape, and duration, making them difficult to classify. Their unpredictable nature has kept them at the edge of scientific understanding. These lights give the impression that the Earth releases brief messages of internal tension, visible only when conditions align perfectly across rock, air, and buried stress. Certain remote regions experience glowing horizons unrelated to the sun. In distant landscapes far from cities and far from polar auroras, observers sometimes witness faint radiance pooling along the horizon long after sunset or long before dawn. This glow does not match typical twilight and often appears in directions where sunlight could not reach. Its color may range from silvery white to soft green or amber. Some explanations involve dust layers high in the atmosphere catching scattered light from beyond the visible curve of the Earth. Others suggest that upper air chemistry may spontaneously emit faint luminescence triggered by waves of charged particles or shifting densities. Yet the glow sometimes appears during calm geomagnetic conditions, and its sharp boundaries suggest a local rather than planetary source. The phenomenon hints at delicate chemical reactions unfolding in the upper sky, painting the edges of the world with light that seems to arise from nowhere. Some animals navigate by cues beyond light, sound, and magnetism. Certain species excel at long-distance travel in conditions where known navigation tools should fail. They migrate through storms, deep forests, and dense fog with accuracy that surpasses what magnetic fields, celestial cues, or memory can provide alone. Studies reveal that some animals adjust their paths even when deprived of magnetic information, while others maintain direction in total darkness with no detectable sound cues. Advanced models propose that they might sense faint atmospheric pressure gradients or chemical traces carried across continents. A few experiments hint at sensitivity to polarized patterns of air molecules or subtle electrical fields generated by weather systems. These organisms appear to integrate multiple streams of environmental information into a coherent map, navigating with a sensory richness beyond current scientific classification. Their abilities suggest that Earth holds channels of perception still invisible to us, woven into wind, chemistry, and planetary rhythms. There are deserts where heat appears and disappears in moving patches. Travelers crossing some sandscapes have encountered drifting zones of warmth that sweep across the ground, rising and fading like invisible tides. These patches can be felt on skin and measured with handheld sensors, yet they move in ways that do not align with sun angle, wind, or cloud cover. Sometimes the warm zones glide uphill or drift sideways against prevailing breezes. Scientists studying the phenomenon propose that layers of air with different densities may slide past one another, concentrating heat into narrow bands. The desert floor, composed of minerals with varying thermal properties, may also radiate warmth unevenly. Still, the moving patches often defy these patterns, shifting more quickly and cleanly than passive heat flow would allow. They create an impression of temperature wandering freely, painting the sand with quiet pulses of warmth, but feel almost intentional. Certain forest creatures communicate with signals we cannot decode. Biologists listening in dense woodland sometimes record complex sound patterns that do not match the calls, footsteps, or movements of known animals. These signals may appear as intricate bursts of rhythm, or faint modulated vibrations that travel through soil and undergrowth. Some originate from insects or small mammals that use frequencies outside human hearing. Yet other recordings capture layered pulses that do not align with any catalogued species. Some creatures may use combinations of vibrations, scents, and microsounds that form a linguistic system far richer than simple calls. Field observations reveal coordinated group behavior among certain species that respond to signals no human microphone can fully detect. This hidden communication network suggests that forests host entire conversations beyond our sensory reach, where creatures share warnings, routes, and subtle cues using channels still beyond the scope of our air. Instruments. The universe occasionally produces sounds that pass through the earth without attenuation. Sensitive detectors buried deep underground have registered faint, repeating vibrations that arrive with patterns unlike known seismic activity. These signals echo through rock with almost no loss of strength, as if carried by a medium unaffected by density or distance. They do not correspond to earthquakes, ocean waves, volcanic movements, or human activity. Some believe they may arise from distant cosmic events that produce gravitational disturbances capable of slipping straight through the planet. Others propose interactions between solar wind and Earth's magnetic boundaries that translate into vibrations far below the surface. Whatever their source, the signals behave like whispers from the cosmos, passing directly through the crust and mantle, emerging on the other side with their structure intact. They remind us that space is not silent, and that Earth, wrapped in its own layers of noise and motion, still receives subtle messages from the wider universe. Thank you for drifting through these mysteries with me tonight. Even after all we have explored, the world remains full of quiet questions waiting in the dark. The sky still hums with hidden rhythms. The earth still moves with secrets beneath our feet. And somewhere out there, the universe continues to whisper in ways we are only beginning to understand. For now, you do not need to solve anything. Let the unknown rest gently at the edge of your thoughts, like a soft glow in the distance. Let your breath fall into an easy rhythm. Let the room become a calm space where curiosity settles into comfort. If you enjoyed this quiet journey, I invite you to like, subscribe, or share a thought below. It helps others find their way here too, one sleepy soul at a time. And whenever you want to wander through more mysteries, the next video will be waiting. But for now, let your eyes grow heavy, let your thoughts drift, and let the hush of the night wrap softly around you. Good night.